This girl, Anran, came to her mother's funeral, only to find her name engraved on the tombstone. Just a few minutes earlier Enron had come to her mother's funeral. There was a group of strangers at the funeral with blank eyes. They weren't moving, looking at Enron. Suddenly, Enron bumped into a strange older woman. This lady seemed to be someone Enron had seen before, but she couldn't remember. After she had recovered, Dad handed the umbrella to Enron and said he was going to buy a bouquet of flowers. At that moment, the crane brought the tombstone. The windscreen of the crane was cracked. The driver then played a piece of music. From so far away, Enron could hear it. Looking back, the strangers were staring at Enron. Suddenly the cigarette fell onto his arm by accident. The driver's hand shook and he let go of the control. The crane instantly lost control and turned towards Enron. The tombstone fell down. The father bought flowers and his daughter fell in a pool of blood. Enron finally raised her hand to check the time. At exactly 4:45 Enron was dead. But when he opened his eyes, Enron was back in the car. The urn was still in his hand. Enron was unsure if he had dreamt it. He got out of the car again and followed his father to the cemetery. The strange thing was that the strangers from the dream, the same strangers from the dream appeared here. At that moment, Dad suddenly asked, "Where is the headstone?" He said the same thing as in the dream. He then handed the umbrella to Enron and said he was going to buy a bouquet of flowers. Dad left and the crane drove up. Enron backed up again and again. He ran into the strange lady again. Enron turned around and ran to the florist to find her father. Enron was so scared she couldn't speak, but her dad just thought she was too tired. The florist trimmed the flowers and handed them to her father, saying, "Do you want a bouquet for your daughter too?" "That's a curse." The father was furious. He threw the flowers away and refused to buy them. Dad and the owner got into a fight. Enron was cornered. At that moment, the florist's mobile phone rang. It played the same music. The screen of the phone was also broken. Just then the boss stumbled over. The scissors plunged directly into Enron's heart. Enron was dead again, and the clock on the wall was exactly 4:45. Enron woke up again and was back in the car, holding her mother's ashes in her hands. This girl will be dead by 4:45, stabbed by a tombstone and scissors. Each time she dies, she travels back in time to 9 minutes before she died. Enron is reborn again. She was terrified and told her father she wanted to go home, but her father said it was the day her mother was buried. "Can you not be so capricious?" Enron then thought that if she knew how she was going to die, wouldn't she be able to avoid it? So she volunteered to go to the florist with her dad to buy flowers. He also told him, "Don't get into trouble with the florist." The two of them walked into the flower shop and the owner was cleaning up. The rag fell on the pressure cooker. However, "I never expected. Dad wanted to buy 2 bouquets of flowers this time. Isn't this a curse on him? Is Dad also an accomplice?" The danger is back. The towel blocked the pressure cooker. The pressure cooker explodes. The lid flew towards Enron. Luckily, Enron quickly walked away to avoid the fatal blow. Enron rushes out of the flower shop, but she ran into the strange lady again. At that moment, her father came out after her. Enron was still upset about why her father had bought 2 bouquets of flowers. Enron was still upset about why he bought 2 bouquets of flowers. But then her father hit her with a dive. The wire had fallen into the ditch. Enron almost stepped into the ditch. Dad saved him. Dad's lens was smashed. At that moment, a familiar song played over the florist's loudspeaker. At that moment the florist rushed out and grabbed Enron. And the dad watched as his daughter was stabbed to death. The time is still 4:45. The camera pans to Enron waking up for the 3rd time. The father tells him to get out of the car. He says there's not much time left. Enron looks at his watch. 8 minutes short of 4:45. Enron doesn't trust his dad anymore. Enron asks who the strangers are. Why did they keep looking at him? At that moment the tombstone arrived. Enron closes her eyes and decides to die. However, this time the headstone landed smoothly, but when she unwrapped it, it was engraved with her name. Enron was devastated, asking her father in a loud voice, but she unexpectedly saw a pledge to voluntarily give up treatment. When she looked up, the strange lady reappeared. Enron was so scared that she ran away. Enron tried to drive away, but then she saw the windshield wipers on the car, remembering that every time she died, there was always something shifting around on Dad's eyes. The first time it was the swing at the cemetery. The second time it was the metronome in the flower shop. The third time it was the wires. These reflections were like windshield wipers. For a moment Enron remembered everything. A mother and daughter are driving. It was raining heavily outside, and the windscreen was fogged up. Suddenly they almost hit an elderly woman. The car hit a crane on the side of the road instead. The mother died instantly, and the cross hanging from the car, the crucifix hanging from the car was stuck in Enron's chest. The rescuers put her on a stretcher. Before she passed out, Enron looked at the time and saw that it was exactly 4:45. The truth came out. It turned out to be a dream Enron had before she died. The first thing she saw after the accident was broken glass. That's why the broken glass appeared 3 times in the dream. The first time was a crane. The second time was a mobile phone. The third time was her father's eyes. And before the accident, Enron was listening to a song with her headphones on. This song would play every time Enron died. The first time it was played by the driver. The second time it was the ringing of the mobile phone. The third time it was the horn on the roof. And the unidentified shaking object over his eyes is actually the windshield wiper. After the car accident, Enron saw her mother die instantly. So in the dream, she was attending her mother's funeral. The ambulance was blue and white. The florist is also blue and white. The rescuers become the cemetery staff. The onlookers at the accident are strangers at the funeral. In the dream, every time Enron is reborn, she runs into an older woman. The older woman was the same older woman who almost got hit by her mother. Anran understood everything that had happened in the dream. Anran looked at the time and saw that it stopped at 4:45. Anran stepped out of the car. Time freezes. Anran arrived at the entrance of the flower shop. Hearing what the florist said, he's not going to wake up again. Why waste money and time? Anran pushed the door open and entered a flash of white light. It turned out that the florist was the doctor who saved him. The doctor told his father to give up his treatment. Anran begged his father not to give up, but in reality, his father was too sick to hear him. He signed the consent form to give up the treatment. Enron's device was removed. Suddenly, Anran's hand moved. The father tried desperately to apologize to his daughter. Anran smiled and said it was okay. Anran turned her head, and the time was heading towards 4:45.